Hey, everybody. Good to see you on this beautiful Friday evening. We are here for those weekend warriors. It's been an exciting week in the CBD world. I can tell you there's a lot of changes and regulations and laws everywhere. I'm going to try to put this microphone on and see if this works. Probably should have tested this first, but well, hey, how are you?
Great.
What are you doing here?
I don't know. I just popped up on the screen. Was it too soon?
Can you hear me all right? Well, I can put you back in there if I need to, but no, I think it's much better with you in the screen. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you fine.
I don't even know if this is even on. Can you still hear
Yes,
me?
I can hear you.
Okay, so I'll just do this another day. I'll try this another time.
The big phone.
Yeah, we're live here in the studio on a beautiful Friday evening. How are you doing, Linda?
Fantastic. Ready for the weekend.
Ready for the weekend to get started?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, for those that don't know, you can type your question in the chat window and we should be able to see it as long as you're not in the private Facebook group. So if you're on YouTube or the Facebook page, then that'd be fine. We'd be able to get your questions answered. So, what did you think, Linda? It was a busy week, right? What's on your mind?
Yeah, happened this week, especially here in Maryland. Legislation was signed by the governor taking Maryland to legal adult use. There are a lot of people who are very excited about that and celebrating today and looking forward to the industry growing and expanding. But I'm not sure exactly how I feel about it. I'm still a little bit confused about the medical program versus adult use. I don't really know what the differences will be, how that will play out. So, curious to know what you think about that.
Yeah, I haven't dug into the details of what exactly made it into the bill that the governor signed, but I do have very strong opinions overall about the cannabis industry and legalization because my adult life, all of my adult life, I'd always been supporting legalizing cannabis and making it available for people that need it, not just for end of lifers, because that's typically what you're going to find out. And I've always felt that it's a natural plant. It's been around humans as a camp follower for tens of thousands of years. And there really isn't any reason why we shouldn't be able to grow our own or at least have some sort of legal way of purchasing it, just like any other plant medicine, herb, botanical, if you will. And on one side, I'm excited and I'm happy that now we get access to cannabis and we don't have to go around in different shady areas and getting untested products. So on one side, you'll have a regulation, you'll have tested products, so you know that they'll be safe, and that's, I think, really important. The other side where I'm not as happy is the controls and how it's not being rolled out in an equitable fashion.
Um,
And I think that is my biggest concern, whereas it's a pay to play environment. So if you were able to pay and get yourself into the right position, at least here in Maryland, then you have a very strong hold on the production, the distribution of cannabis here in Maryland, and just the psychoactive components, because it doesn't seem like they even care about CBD because it's non-psychoactive. And as a person who is very familiar with the benefits of the whole plant and all the cannabinoids, there's just hundreds of molecules and compounds that grow naturally in the plant that have just tremendous amount of benefit in bringing us back to our balance and homeostasis. And it's there doesn't seem to be any concern for the safety of CBD products. So as long as it's not intoxicating, that's all they seem to care about. So
I mean, I think I'm concerned about the patient overall. There are people who definitely believe in the medicinal benefits of cannabis. They have a hard time getting advice. They don't know where to begin. They don't know how to use it. There's no medical guidance. And now it seems like it'll be more of a free for all. And I'm genuinely concerned for the people who want medicine. And I'm also concerned just as a parent where cannabis is now going to be legal. People were always exposed to it. Kids were always exposed to it, but there was a pretty strong stigma, and a parent could say, this is illegal, you shouldn't do this, but now it's legal. And I just wonder if people are having good conversations with their children about safety and usage and
How
dependence.
could they? How could they, right? Like, where are they gonna? Where are parents gonna get accurate information because they don't know?
And
Like,
if you offer them, do you want to talk about this? Do you want some information to share with your kids? It's kind of like, no, my kid's not going to do that, even though your kid's been exposed to this in their own home probably for a long time. So there's a disconnect there. So what happens now? Now it's legal, so no big deal.
do you think now that the argument, I guess, that it's no longer legal, it's legal, so leave me alone, mom or dad. It's legal, just like the booze you drink all night. It's legal now, so there's no harm in it. It's not addictive. It's fine. I can just buy it now. Is that what your concern is? Is that it's sort of now?
A little confusing, and people think it's harmless in most ways, and they don't realize that the adolescent brain is severely impacted by cannabis use. And there's a lot of brain development still going on in kids until their 20s. It's memory and speech and balance, and it affects their ability to drive and make decisions. And just because something is legal and tested doesn't mean it's safe for the adolescent to be indulging in.
You bring up something also, which I'm very, there's a delicate line here, because what I'm also afraid of is the new reefer madness, because we're educated and we know about cannabis, and we talk about the risks in cannabis, because anything that you're going to use does have a counterbalance. It's not always just all one positive without any trade-offs.
Life doesn't work that way.
But in context, cannabis in my mind is much safer an intoxicating product, if you're looking at intoxication, than alcohol for the body. If there's certain medications that you're taking for certain conditions, if you're already suffering in a method and you have to choose between, you have to get yourself better. Cannabis a lot of times can be looked at as a less harmful, because you're not dealing with someone that's perfectly on a baseline. You're dealing with some challenges. So I always just want to put it in context, and you can probably say it a lot better than I can, what I'm trying to say. But I don't want to scare people off from cannabis, but I also don't want to make people feel like there isn't anything that you have to pay attention to, because there are devils in the details.
Right. Pros and cons, and you have to gather information and try to make the best decision for the situation. But I think, just to go back to the adolescents who are now going to understand this as a legal thing, you can't even call it a medicine when you have an adult use program legal for recreational purposes, then it becomes like a totally different kind of conversation. How do you explain to them that just because it's legal doesn't mean that it's okay and it's good for you, that it's not going to impact your brain, it's not going to impact your development, your decision making, your everything. I just think that it's important to bring this to light, because there will be more cannabis in more homes, more openly displayed. And
well, you can grow now in Maryland, you can grow 2 plants, which is, I don't know how they came up with 2 plants that as the rule.
An air and a spare, I don't know, perfect.
Well, the only plants that matter in this in the cannabinoid space are females. Males are for seeds, and So anyone that eats hemp seeds, which are incredible, we should talk about that one time also. We'll have to put a note there. If anyone's into nutrition, there's tremendous amount of nutrition in the hemp seeds. But when we're talking about cannabinoids and the medical program, they're regulating really just THC, but it's the female plant. So actually growing. So if you want to grow two plants, logistically, unless you purchase seeds that are already feminized, that are guaranteed to only grow female, one of the processes is you have to sex your plant. So they don't show their sex until, depending on the variety, it could be a couple weeks. So you germinate it, you grow it. At that point, we're talking about this: when is a plant, right? It's almost like, when is a human? Is it a plant when it's a sprout? Is it, And so if you're allowed to grow two plants, what'd you say?
When it's viable, when it can live without its mother.
All right. So when it sexes, right? So that means if I plant 6 seeds and I get 3 females, then I have to destroy one of them, or I have to give it to somebody. Am I allowed, can I give it to someone else? And then I have to grow it, and I have to grow it out of sight from anyone else. So you're not allowed to grow it. I know that's one of some of the language in the bill. It has to be out of sight or public view, which means you have to grow indoors. So then you're talking about artificial light. You have to deal with herbicides, pesticides. You got to feed it. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for 2 plants. So, the grow environments that the dispensaries have, most of them are all indoor anyway. And one of the benefits of cannabis is its ability to sequester carbon from the environment and repair the soil. So, not to give a plug for Wallman's Apothecary, but I'm going to give a plug for Wallman's Apothecary. We specifically work with farmers that use a regenerative method for farming. So we're sequestering carbon out of the oxygen, out of the air, and then we're putting it into the soil and using it as a rotational crop, along with tomatoes and cabbage and lettuce and peppers. So it's actually, and it's not using electricity, no pesticides needed. So as far as what I would like to see, I would really like to see something like that as something that's supported. But in this bill or law now, it's prohibited. You have to grow it. I mean, unless you have enough property, but most people are looking at, growing it in their house. The other thing that is going to be difficult is the smell. So when you grow it when it starts to flower, the smell is so strong. There's this indoor smoking act. Like, you're not allowed to smoke and consume. If you're in an apartment or something, there's issues about smoking, but it really smells. So I wonder how many, if one person's growing it in an apartment building, it's most likely, unless you have a very elaborate carbon filter system, which doesn't really make sense for, anyway, I don't want to get too deep, but there's a lot of things that we're going to experience here. And
what are they going to process? Like, how are they going to know if someone has 3 plants or 5 plants?
Well, it's stupid because honestly, like, if I have an area, let's say, of where I'm going to grow, and it's a 5x5 space, I can get, depending on how, if I can grow it right, where 2 plants, 2 stalks in the ground produce and fill the room. So it's really, the plant is really creative. And this is what they were doing in the OGs in California. When they had limitations, they were breeding different varieties to maximize. You see some that are like huge, they look like giant Christmas trees, and it's one plant. And then you also have, in a lot of these indoor grows, they're, very small, spindly, especially like the hydroponic grown, they have thinner stalks and they don't produce as much per plant because they're not limited. So
let me ask this, because of course,
I'm not going to be knocking on people's doors.
Yeah, well, is there going to be like a cannabis growing SS where they knock on your door and they inspect, and if they're going to fine people? Like, where do they come up with these rules? And then it just doesn't make sense.
Well, it's all a money game. So it all comes down to money. So if they have a new cannabis commission, they'll have It is now it's the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Cannabis Commission in Maryland, and then there's alcohol, tobacco, and then cannabis is somewhat separate. Because alcohol is the same way. They're trying to stop bootleggers and people that are making their home brews. Now there's the small licenses and so forth. You can do homebrew beer, but there's really not many issues there. But with cannabis, it's a different strategy. Plus, there's a lot more black market cannabis than there is black market alcohol. There's a lot of people that have been doing it for years, and they've been. And we get into the legal issues there and the people locked up for doing things, but there's a lot more black market cannabis out there. So, it's a money game. Plus, the criminal justice system has made so much on incarcerating people for cannabis. So they have to replace that revenue some way. I haven't spent enough time thinking about it. If there's any law experts here that want to give us their perspective, chime in. Not today, but any other time we come on, you can comment. But these are all really good questions.
I read somewhere that they expected to take 30 to 40 years to tamp down on the illicit market, much like it was with bootleggers after alcohol prohibition. But
if they can, even if they can, because there's that
like
enforcement.
It's a less elaborate process to grow a plant and use it or keep an illicit market going that's already so well established, and the prices are cheaper, and sometimes people make decisions just based on cost. They don't care if something in a dispensary is tested or better quality. It may be tested. There's no reason to believe it's necessarily better quality or safer, because it's still a retail establishment. All different kinds of things come through retail establishments. Plants have a shelf life. So this concept of it's going to be this huge business that's going to bring all this revenue into the state and all these opportunities, like that's a lot of pressure to put on a new industry that's about plants. You're talking about an agricultural product that already has massive competition on the street. Where do they get the data to make these decisions and convince the lawmakers that this is going to be billions of dollars of revenue and it's going to fund everything and solve every problem in the state?
Well, they hire companies to do these assessments. So it's all down to you follow the money, but it's going to be challenging. And I want to hear more people talk. I want to hear what other people have to say. It's hard for me to understand how, it's like they have an expectation, but then there's also the reality. Like there's some people that I know in Baltimore that own property, and they have people that stay in their rental, their landlord. They have people in their property that they can't get out, and they don't have police enough to enforce these orders. So they come in, they go check the police go take the property. There's no one there. They said there's nothing we can do. As soon as the police leave, they go back in the property, and there isn't enough manpower to enforce a lot of these things. So it's going to be a selective enforcement environment. And I'm really interested to hear what legal would advise people to do in a situation where, if you're, what's the risk? What's the penalty? I don't even know. What is the penalty? Do you have any idea in Maryland?
I don't know how they can check on people unless someone's going door to door. Neighbors are reporting each other for smells like they're growing 3 plants, not 2. I don't know how any of it's going to make sense. I don't know how this industry is going to attract new customers. Like how many people are suddenly going to become cannabis users just because it's legal? How is it sustainable?
Well, you hit on something that
Back to what about the medical patients? Because there are still people who are suffering and want to have a plant-based solution rather than pills and traditional solutions. So are they going to be completely lost now starting July 1st? Will there be any available to counsel these people?
it's a good point. It really is. They estimate that the medical program, the sales will drop by half, maybe half to 2/3. And that's going to be taken up by the recreational or adult use side of it. So they know that people use their medical card in Maryland just like a Netflix account. So they already know that there's other people getting it. And if there isn't anyone advising them, and look, we know medical directors at dispensaries. They never talk to clients. They don't get consultations. We hear customers complain about that to us, that they walked into the dispensary and the salespeople may have been nice, or the bud tender was friendly, and they helped them make a decision on which product to purchase. But the stats are showing that people are purchasing high THC products that are cheap.
And then get the results they want, they're scared off and they don't go back. And then they're back on all their pills and everything else. So there's a huge disconnect. So
all right. Well, that was a really good conversation. And what time? I think we've pretty much overstayed our welcome here on Friday. What'd you say?
It's almost 9 o'clock and I'm already in my jammies.
I know. I can take the dogs out. All right, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Linda. It was a good talk. And everyone, put your comments in. We're going to keep this going. There's so much to talk about. We have so many people that actually we want to introduce you to that have experience in this industry, experience with the plant, experience dealing with issues, whether it's a mental illness challenge, a physical illness challenge, or just general wellness. There's a lot of people that do know what they're talking about, and we want to amplify their voices. So stay tuned, keep in touch, and thank you. Have a great weekend.
Good night.